Vanished to freeze snow fell like tiny knives from the sky. The wind howled across the ice-covered land, making the trees shake like scared animals. Each breath burned her lungs. Her legs were weak, her body was cold. But she kept walking. Her name was Zara. Once, she lived in a warm home full of light. Now her people had thrown her out like garbage. She didn't even get a trial, just a lie, a shout, and then exile. "You are a danger," they said. "You must leave before the sun sets." They gave her no coat, no food, not even a goodbye. Jera's hands were blue now. Her long fingers were numb. She tried to rub them together, but it didn't help. The planet's night was cruel. Even strong males couldn't survive out here. For long, and she was alone. Far ahead on a distant hill, she saw something, a light. It was small but steady. Not a fire. Something brighter. She froze. Her heart beat faster. Was it a human? Her people called them monsters. They said humans were emotionless killers. Creatures from a death world who loved war and fire. If they found you near their shelters, they shot without warning. Jera stared at the light. Her body begged her to move toward it. Her pride told her to stay away. She chose pride. The wind grew louder. By the time she reached a small rocky area, her knees were shaking. She fell to the ground, gasping. Her breath came out in white clouds. Her skin burned like it was on fire, and yet she was freezing. "I can't die," she whispered. "Not like this." She opened her bag. Inside, there were only 3 things: a broken pendant, a small piece of bread, and her outer robe. She looked at the robe, then at the sky, then at her shaking hands. Her jaw tightened. She tore the robe into pieces. Using a sharp rock, she made a shallow hole in the snow, lined it with stone and dry leaves. Then she set the cloth on fire with a match she had stolen earlier that day. The flame was weak, but it lived. She held her hands near it. The warmth was soft, like a dying hug. But it was enough for now. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. The cold would kill her if she closed her eyes. All night she sat there feeding small bits of cloth into the fire. One by one. Slowly. Carefully. The robe was gone before the moon moved halfway across the sky. By morning, she was dressed in nothing but thin inner layers. Her skin was scratched and red, but she was alive. Barely. She stood again. Her legs almost gave up. "Move," she told herself. "Don't stop. You stop, you die." Jera kept walking. Step after painful step. All around her was silence. No birds, no animals, just snow, ice, and cold wind. But then, again, she saw it, the light, closer this time. It came from a boxy structure made of metal and stone. There were strange marks on the walls. She didn't understand them, but she knew what this place was. A human shelter. She dropped to her knees behind a rock and stared. She expected soldiers, guns, motion sensors, anything. But there was no noise, no movement, just that warm yellow light coming from a small window. She felt something strange then. A tear rolled down her cheek. She hadn't cried since her exile. Was this what death looked like? A warm room she would never reach? She looked at her shaking hands again. "Should I go?" she whispered. Her people would call her stupid. They would say, "Better to die than trust a human." But as the sky darkened again, and snow began to fall once more, her fear of death started to feel bigger than her fear of humans. Still, she didn't move. Not yet. Instead, she sat down again and pulled off a sleeve. She ripped it. One last fire. Her hands worked slower now. Her fingers didn't listen to her brain. The fire was smaller than before, weaker. She leaned close to it, breathing heavy. Far behind her, inside the human shelter, a shape moved near the window. She didn't see it. She didn't know he was watching her, but he was. Second night, second flame. The next night came faster, or maybe time just stopped meaning anything to her. Jera couldn't feel her feet anymore. She had walked in a wide circle, trying to stay close to the human shelter, but not too close, like a hungry animal afraid of the fire. The cold was worse now. She had burned nearly all her clothes the first night. Now she had nothing left to offer the flame, except one last piece of her dignity. Her hair, her long dark braid, was tied with ceremonial cloth. It marked her as a daughter of the healer caste. Once it was a sign of respect. Now it was just fuel. She sat behind a jagged rock, shaking. Her lips were cracked. Her skin looked gray. Her breath came out in sharp gasps. She pulled out a shard of glass from her belt pouch, sharp, stolen from the remains of her broken pendant. With one hard motion, she cut off her braid. The pain didn't come from the scalp. It came from somewhere deeper. She placed the hair on a patch of dry bark and struck her final match. Flame, tiny, blue, dancing in the wind. She huddled close, trying to breathe warmth from it, but the fire was small. Too small. Her fingers were blue, almost black. She pressed them closer to the flame. Suddenly she heard something. Crunch. Snow. Footsteps? She froze. Not from cold, but from fear. Crunch. Closer now. She didn't dare turn around. Maybe it was one of the snow beasts. Or worse, a patrol from her own people come to make sure she died. Then silence, the kind that rings in your ears. She waited. 10 breaths. 20. Nothing. She slowly turned her head. No one there. But far, far off. The door to the human shelter was open. Just a crack. No sound. No voice. Just that same golden light, spilling onto the snow like honey. She stared. Had someone come out? Had they watched her? She didn't know. But something had changed. The light no longer looked scary. It looked safe, and that was dangerous. Don't go, she whispered to herself. You'll die anyway. But deep down, she didn't believe that anymore. She looked down at her fire. It was dying again. Her braid was almost gone. Her fingers were shaking. She needed more fuel. She needed... Her eyes widened. There was something sitting near the edge of the rock. A blanket, thick, heavy, folded carefully. Not blown there by wind. Placed. Her mouth fell open. Someone had left it for her. She looked toward the human shelter again. The door was closed now. The light still on. No footsteps, no voice. Just that single act. A gift. Was it a trap? Maybe. But traps didn't come with soft cloth. She pulled the blanket to her chest and wrapped herself tight. Warmth, not just physical, something else. Hope. For the first time in 2 nights she slept. But inside the human shelter. He sat by the window, watching her. A cup of hot liquid in his hands. A strange look in his eyes. He had seen all kinds of aliens. Soldiers, traders, slavers. But not like her. He didn't know why he had left the blanket. Maybe because she reminded him of his daughter. Maybe because no one deserved to freeze to death outside his door. But deep inside, something was waking in him. Curiosity. 3rd night, she starts to cry. Jera had always believed crying was a weakness. She was raised to keep her head high, to heal others without showing pain. But now, on the 3rd night, hidden behind a snow-covered rock with her back to the human shelter, she cried. Silent at first. Then her shoulders began to shake. Tears froze on her cheeks before they could fall. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Only the cold wind answered her. The blanket had saved her once, but it was not magic. It couldn't stop her stomach from growling. It couldn't protect her from what was happening inside her body. Fever. She could feel it now, burning her blood while the outside world stayed frozen. Jera lay curled in the snow, blanket wrapped tight, teeth chattering, stomach empty. And in her hand, the broken pendant, the last thing from her old life. It once glowed blue when held by family. Now it was dark, cold, empty, just like her. She pressed it against her forehead and whispered, "I'm not ready to die." But death was already near. That night she didn't make fire. There was nothing left to burn, not cloth, not hair, not hope. So she stared at the stars. She thought they looked like small exit doors in the sky. Maybe if she closed her eyes, she could float through one. Inside the shelter, the human was watching again. He didn't know her name, didn't know her language, but he knew what death looked like, and she was almost there. He grabbed his jacket, reached for the door, then stopped. Protocol. The rules were clear. No unauthorized contact with alien life, especially ones who appeared unstable or dangerous. He clenched his fist, then looked at the steaming cup on his table. He had made two. One for himself, and one he didn't admit was for her. Back outside, Shara heard a sound. Not a footstep this time, not wind, but metal. She sat up fast, eyes wide. Her head spun from fever, but she focused. Something was on the snow. A tin bowl, steam rising from it. Food. She crawled toward it, shaking all over. The smell hit her first, spicy, hot, unfamiliar. She didn't care. She dipped two shaking fingers into the thick soup and brought them to her lips. She cried again, not from pain, but because it tasted kind. She ate every drop, then hugged the empty bowl to her chest like a treasure. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know what he wanted. But she knew one thing now. The human didn't want her to die. And inside the shelter, he watched her finish, then leaned back in his chair, sighing. He still didn't know if she was dangerous, but he knew this. He couldn't pretend she wasn't out there anymore. The human door opens. She didn't know what day it was anymore. Her body felt light like smoke. Her fingers were cracked. Her eyes kept closing without permission. Every time she blinked, the world went darker. And still, she didn't leave. Why? Because something strange had happened. The human hadn't shot her. He hadn't shouted or warned or waved a weapon. Instead, he gave her a blanket, then food, and now, the third offering, silence. No questions, no demands, just quiet help. Jara didn't understand it, and part of her didn't trust it, but another part, deep inside her frostbitten chest, wanted to believe. That evening, the wind returned like a wild animal. It tore through the trees, throwing ice like knives. Shara covered her face with the blanket and crawled into a small hollow near the human shelter wall. She pressed her back against the metal, hoping to steal just a little heat from the structure. None came. The building was too cold, too sealed. No warmth leaked out, but then, a sound. She held her breath, the click of a lock, then, the slow, heavy creak of a door. She turned her head in fear and saw it. The human was standing there, tall, broad-shouldered, a metal tool in one hand and something softer in the other, a bundle of folded clothes. His eyes met hers, not cold, not angry, just curious. "You're still here," he said quietly. She didn't answer. Her mouth was too dry to speak. He looked down at the snow between them. Then, without another word, he stepped back and opened the door wider. Warm air hit her like a wave. For a second, she thought she would faint from the sudden comfort. She looked past him into the room. Lights, heat, steam rising from something that smelled like meat and herbs. But it wasn't the smell or the warmth that made her crawl forward. It was the way he had looked at her, like she wasn't broken, like she wasn't something to fear or throw away. Inside the shelter, everything felt wrong, too clean, too bright. Jara stumbled across the floor and collapsed near the heater, her body curled up tight, the blanket still wrapped around her like skin. The human closed the door. He didn't speak right away, didn't come too close. He just placed the bundle of clothes near her feet and returned to the other side of the room. She looked at the bundle, soft fabric, real pants, a sweater, not armor, not prison clothes, just warm things. Her eyes filled with water again, but she blinked fast and wiped it away. She wouldn't cry in front of him. Never again. After a few minutes, he placed a metal cup on the floor and slid it across to her. She stared at it. Steam. Drink, he said. She brought it to her lips and sipped. Then again. Sweet. Strange. Hot. She didn't know the word for it, but it tasted like safety. He finally spoke again. What's your name? She looked down. She hadn't said her name aloud in days. Jera, she whispered. Jera, he repeated softly, testing the sound. And you? She asked, her voice cracked and raw. He paused, then smiled faintly. Call me Jack. They didn't say anything else that night. But when the storm outside screamed and the lights inside flickered, Jera didn't flinch. Because for the first time in her life, someone had opened a door for her, not to push her out, but to let her in. Her body heals, but her spirit doesn't. The heater hummed softly. The shelter lights buzzed overhead. The danger was gone, but Jera still didn't feel safe. She sat in a corner on the floor, wrapped in clean clothes the human gave her. Her skin was no longer blue with cold. Her cuts were bandaged. Her fever had broken. Her body was healing. But inside everything was still broken. Jack, the human, didn't ask questions. He didn't ask why she was alone. He didn't ask why her arm had a deep burn mark shaped like a symbol. He didn't even ask what species she was. He just treated her like someone who mattered, which confused her even more. She kept watching him from the corner of her eye. Every time he stood up, she stiffened. Every time he walked toward her, she pulled back. He noticed, but didn't comment. That morning, Jack made something that sizzled in a pan. It smelled strange but warm. He placed a plate near her, then sat at the other end of the table and began eating his own food. Jera just stared at it. He glanced at her. You don't have to eat it, he said gently, but it's better than snow. She didn't laugh, didn't even smile, but she picked up the spoon. The food was salty, rich. Unlike anything her people ever made, she didn't hate it. Hours passed. Snow piled outside the windows. The storm had not ended. But in here, there was heat, light, quiet, too quiet. Jera stood up slowly and walked to a shelf filled with tools. She wasn't sure why she did it. Maybe just to prove she could still move, still think. Jack looked over his shoulder. Careful, he said. Some of that stuff bites. She touched a metal object with small wires. What is it? She asked. He smiled. A broken translator. Trying to fix it. Why? So I can understand you better. Jera blinked. But you already understand? Me. He paused. Yes. But not enough. That night she didn't sleep much. Memories kept waking her. Voices from her past. Accusations. Screams. The moment her own sister pointed at her and said, it was her, she did it. They blamed her for something she never did, and when she screamed the truth, no one listened. She rose from the thin bed Jack had set up in the corner. The heater glowed softly. Jack was asleep in a chair near the window, arms crossed, mouth slightly open. She crept closer, studying him. There was a scar on his temple. His hands were calloused. He looked tired, even in sleep. Why was he alone here? Why did he help her? She leaned in closer without meaning to. Then, his eyes snapped open. Jera froze. They stared at each other. I wasn't going to hurt you, she said quickly. I know, he replied, calm. I've seen fear before. You're not full of it anymore. She looked down. I still don't trust you. You don't have to, Jack said. But maybe trust the fact you're still alive. She stepped back and nodded slowly, then quietly. My people burned me. For something I didn't do. Jack didn't ask what, he just said, I believe you. And with those 3 words, something inside her cracked, not from pain, but from relief. He shows her fire is not just for burning. The fire crackled gently in the metal stove. It wasn't wild. It didn't scream. It didn't burn with hatred. It just glowed, soft and warm. Jera sat across from it, legs folded under her, her eyes locked on the flames like they were alive. Jack was nearby, fixing a small circuit board at his desk, but his eyes often drifted toward her. She hadn't moved. In almost an hour, she just watched the fire. Back where I'm from, she finally whispered, her voice small. They only lit fires when someone was about to be punished. Jack stopped working. She didn't look at him. They called it the cleansing flame. Sometimes they tied people to poles. Sometimes they just branded us. She pulled her sleeve up slightly, revealing the dark mark on her arm, shaped like a curved X inside a circle. This was mercy, she said. They said I didn't deserve the full fire. Just this one. Jack didn't speak. He didn't say, sorry. He didn't offer pity. Instead, he stood up and walked to the fire. He picked up a kettle and poured hot water into a cracked mug. The steam rose like breath from a dragon's nose. He handed the mug to her. She hesitated. He smiled. This fire doesn't hurt. It warms water. It boils soup. It bakes bread. It makes life possible. She looked at the mug in her hands. It didn't burn. It comforted. She brought it to her lips and sipped. A soft breath escaped her. Almost a sigh. Almost peace. Later, Jack opened a storage box. Inside were small, round stones, smooth, shiny. He placed one in her palm. What is it? She asked. Firestone, he said. Not real fire, but when you charge it, it gives off heat for a few hours. Soldiers use them when they sleep outside. She stared at it. Your people made this just to survive? Jack nodded. We don't worship fire, we use it, but we respect it. She held the stone tightly, then said, I never knew fire could be good. Jack gave a small laugh. I didn't know aliens could be so afraid of it. She smiled, just a little. That night the wind outside screamed again, but Jera didn't tremble. She sat closer to the heater, her eyes softer now, her breathing calm. Jack handed her a small data pad. She tapped it. It showed a map. He pointed to one spot far to the east. That's the closest station. Other humans live there. She looked up. Why are you out here alone? Jack leaned back in his chair. His jaw moved slightly as if chewing on old thoughts. Some people don't fit in, he said. Too loud, too soft, too angry, too tired. I was all of them. Jera looked at the fire again. You hid in the cold, just like me. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Before she went to sleep that night, she reached into her pocket and placed something on the table, her broken pendant. Jack looked at it. You sure? She nodded. It doesn't glow for me anymore. Maybe it'll glow for someone who still believes in things. Jack stared at it for a long time, then back at her. You're not as broken as you think, he said. She pulled the blanket over her shoulders, eyes heavy. But I'm still learning how. To stop shivering, he nodded. Then we'll keep the fire burning. She stood at his door again. This time by choice. The storm had passed. The world outside was quiet now. Too quiet. Like everything had been covered in soft blankets of snow, soundless and still. Inside the shelter, Jack poured the last of the tea into a metal cup and placed it on the table. But Jera wasn't there. Her bed was empty. Her blanket, folded. The broken pendant, gone. So was she. He stood by the window, eyes scanning the white hills. There were no footprints, no tracks. She had left in the early morning before even the machines noticed, and she didn't say goodbye. Jack didn't blame her. Some people didn't need a final word. Some needed space. She had healed, At least enough to walk away on her own. That was more than most. He sat down, pulled out a notebook, and began to write a report he knew he'd never send. Subject, alien female, name unknown, calls herself Jera. Species unknown, status alive, behavior lost, cold, brave, dangerous only to herself. Recommendation, let her go. 3 nights passed, then a 4th. The shelter was quiet again, empty, like before. Except now everything felt slightly out of place. Jack caught himself putting out 2 plates instead of 1. He cooked more food than he could eat. He left the extra cup on the table, just in case. And then, just before dawn, a soft knock. Not loud, not urgent. Just there. Jack froze. He hadn't heard that sound in years. Another knock. He stood slowly, heart thumping, and walked to the door. When he opened it, she was standing there, covered in snow, wrapped in animal hide. A new firestone hung around her neck like a charm, but her eyes were different now. Not lost, not afraid, alive. I found them, she said. Jack blinked. Found who? She smiled. Others like me. Runaways. Left behind. Forgotten. I helped them survive the snow. Gave them what you gave me. Jack stepped aside silently. She didn't enter right away. She stood at the edge. I'm not the same person who crawled here, she said. I know, Jack said. You walked back. She stepped through the door, but not as a guest this time, as an equal. She placed something on the table, a new pendant, made from melted metal and small stones. I made it, she said. For you. Jack looked at it, then at her. I'm not a pendant-wearing kind of guy, Jera shrugged. That's fine, I'm not a please-help-me kind of girl, yet here we are. They both laughed. Quiet. Real. Later that day, they sat by the heater, a new flame burning inside it. Jera watched the fire, not with fear, but with peace. Jack handed her a flare gun. What's this for? She asked. If the cold comes back, he said, and you're too far away. Light it. She looked at him. You'll come? He nodded. I'll run. She held the flare gun tight. This time, her hands didn't shake. Outside, snow fell again. But this time, it wasn't a threat. It was just weather. Because now, she knew where the door was. And more importantly, she knew how to open it. The end.